At some point in your life, you may have woken in the night unable to move, completely aware, completely conscious, eyes open, unable to move a single muscle. Not a dream. You were awake. You could hear the room around you, traffic outside, a door somewhere in the building, the ordinary sounds of the world continuing without you. And there was something in the room, not necessarily something you could see, a weight, a pressure at the edges of the dark, something at the foot of the bed or pressing on your chest from above or standing just outside your line of sight. The clinical term for what you experienced is sleep paralysis. If you have experienced this, and more people have than will admit it, you are lying on your back. Solomon's tradition has a specific name for what you encountered, and a specific instruction for how to make sure it never happens again. That instruction was written into Jewish law 3,000 years ago. In 2002, a team of sleep researchers at the University of Waterloo confirmed it. Two systems, 3,000 years apart, the same danger, the same solution. That is what I want to show you tonight. I need to begin with the text, not a mystical grimoire, not a manuscript buried in a cave, the Shulchan Aruch. This is the authoritative code of Jewish law, compiled by Rabbi Joseph Caro in the 16th century, codifying centuries of Talmudic tradition. It is the legal guide that observant Jews have followed since it was published. Not esoteric, not fringe, central. Orach Chaim, chapter 239, section 2. In that section, the Shulchan Aruch prohibits sleeping on the back. It does not suggest this, it does not recommend this, it prohibits it. The prescribed position is the right side, body slightly curled, right side down. This is not a posture guideline for comfort. This is a legal ruling rooted in the Talmudic tradition that stretches back through the rabbis of Babylon to the wisdom that Solomon's court preserved. Let me show you where that ruling comes from. The source passage is Talmud Berakhot 13b. I want to sit with this for a moment before I read it to you. Berakhot is one of the most studied tractates in the Babylonian Talmud. It opens with the timing of the evening prayer. It moves through the obligations of the nighttime hours. You encountered it in our conversation about water dreams, the same tractate a few pages earlier. At 13b, the Talmud discusses sleep positions as part of the section on nighttime prayer and protection. The instruction is explicit. A person should not lie on their back. They should turn slightly to the right side. This is the prescribed sleeping position for the recitation of the Shema before sleep, the final prayer, the declaration that seals the household for the night. The right side is not incidental. It is the position Solomon's tradition identified as protected. The back position is unprotected. The Mishnah Berurah, the 20th century commentary on the Shulchan Aruch, written by Rabbi Yisrael Meir Kagan, cites both the Berakhot source and amplifies it with the mystical tradition. What is the mystical tradition's explanation? Why is the back position specifically prohibited? The Zohar addresses this directly, and so does Sefer Hasidim, the 12th century Kabbalistic text on ethical and spiritual practice. During sleep, according to Kabbalistic tradition, the soul partially departs the body, not fully. The soul does not leave, but it enters a state of vulnerability, unlike anything in waking life. The sleeping person cannot see, cannot speak, cannot name what approaches. They cannot defend themselves because they are not present in the usual way. This vulnerability exists in every sleeping position, but the Zohar and Sefer Hasidim identify the supine position, flat on the back, face upward, arms open, as the position of maximum exposure. Not because the body resembles a corpse. The research on ancient Near Eastern burial practice actually shows that most ancient burials were in the fetal position, not supine. The corpse theory is a later rationalization that misses the point. The Kabbalistic explanation is more specific. The supine position is the posture of total passivity, total openness. It is the only sleeping position from which a person cannot instinctively turn or curl or shield themselves. In the Kabbalistic geometry of the body during sleep, the right side is associated with what the tradition calls chesed, divine protection, the channel of blessing. To lie on the right side is to be oriented toward that channel, The left side is manageable, not ideal but manageable. The back is different, face upward, completely open, soul partially absent, and in that geometry, nothing between the sleeper and what moves through the hours of darkness. The Zoharic tradition describes this as Sitra Akra exposure, the other side, the side that is not divine protection, and the instruction, maintained in Jewish law for at least 1,500 years and still observed by millions of people today, is this: do not sleep on your back. Turn to your right side, recite the Shema, seal the night, then sleep. Now I want to pause here, because what I have shown you so far is compelling as tradition, as a system of practice preserved across 3 millennia of continuous observance. But I want to show you something else. In 2002, a study was published in the Journal of Sleep Research. The title was specific: Situational Factors Affecting Sleep Paralysis and Associated Hallucinations, Position and Timing Effects. The researchers were James Allen Cheney and colleagues working from the University of Waterloo. They analyzed a large sample of sleep paralysis episodes. The question they wanted to answer was whether the body's sleeping position had any measurable effect on the occurrence of sleep paralysis. The answer they found was this: 58% of sleep paralysis episodes occurred while the person was lying on their back. 58%. And when they controlled for how much time people actually spent in each sleeping position during a typical night, accounting for the fact that back sleeping is only one of several positions, the finding became more dramatic. The supine sleeper is 3 to 4 times more likely to experience sleep paralysis than the side sleeper. 3 to 4 times. Solomon's tradition had a name for this. It had an instruction for preventing it. It had a prescribed alternative position. The 2002 study confirmed all 3, from different directions, through different methods. 25 centuries after Berakhot 13b, let me tell you what sleep paralysis actually is, because the clinical mechanism is extraordinary. During REM sleep, the sleep stage in which dreaming occurs, the brain activates a specific mechanism to prevent you from acting out your dreams. 2 neurotransmitters, glycine and GABA, suppress motor activity. Your body is effectively paralyzed while you dream. This is protective. It is supposed to happen. Sleep paralysis occurs when this REM dissociation mechanism continues into partial wakefulness. The brain reaches consciousness, full, clear, aware consciousness, but the muscle suppression system has not yet released. The result? You are completely awake. You can hear the room, you can think, you can see the ceiling, and you cannot move anything. That is the neurological event. But here is what the research also confirmed. During sleep paralysis, the brain generates vivid hypnagogic hallucinations, and those hallucinations, across every culture studied, take the same form. Something is there, a malevolent presence, a weight on the chest, something pressing from above or standing at the foot of the bed or sitting across the body. It is not frightening in an abstract way. It is specifically, viscerally, terrifyingly present. The Talmudic and Kabbalistic sources describe exactly this: an entity approaching the supine sleeper, pressing on the chest, sitting on the body, immobilizing the limbs. The description in 16th century legal commentary, the description in 12th century Kabbalistic ethics, the description from a 2002 peer-reviewed study. Same entity, same position, same experience. And this is where I need to show you something that David, the skeptic, and Grace, the believer, both need to hear. Because what I'm about to tell you is not evidence for one tradition against another. It is evidence that every tradition, without reference to any other, without access to each other, arrived at the same observation. In medieval European tradition, the sleep paralysis entity was called the mare, a creature that sat on the sleeping person's chest. The Old English word mara, the Old Norse mara, the creature that rides the sleeper. This is the origin of the word nightmare. Not a bad dream. A mare, a specific entity, sitting on you in the night. The same entity, the same experience, the same position. In Islamic tradition, the entity is the jinn, and the specific term for the sleep paralysis encounter is being sat upon by a jinn, a spirit pressing down on the chest of a sleeping person. In Japanese tradition, kanashibari, literally bound in metal, the experience of waking unable to move with something there. The same. In Yoruba spiritual tradition in West Africa, Ogun Oru, night warfare. The experience of paralysis and a pressing entity that attacks through the Ori, the personal head spirit, the seat of destiny. In Igbo tradition, the MMO. Spirits of disruption, most active around sleeping persons who are fully exposed, lying flat, arms open, face upward. Every culture, every century, a person lying on their back, unable to move, with something there. Solomon's tradition was not the first to name this danger, but it is the one that left the most specific instruction for what to do. I want to tell you what happened to me. London, November 2004. I was in my late 30s by then. I had been living in a small flat in Holloway, North London, for several years, teaching a course on ancient Near Eastern demonology at a university. I had read Berakhot 13b many times. I had taught it. I knew the Shulchan Aruch's prohibition. I had explained the Kabbalistic reasoning to students. What I had not done was follow the instruction myself. It seemed, and I say this with some embarrassment now, like one of those ancient bodily prohibitions that made sense in its original cultural context, but had no particular urgency for a man sleeping in a flat in North London in the 21st century. I treated it as information, not as a practice. One night in November, I woke at approximately 3 in the morning, completely awake, alert, unable to move. I could hear a car outside on the Holloway Road. I could see the ceiling of my bedroom. I could feel the sheets on the bed. I could not move any part of my body. There was something at the foot of the bed. I am not going to tell you what it was like because I think the people watching this who have experienced sleep paralysis already know, and the people who have not will understand eventually. What I can tell you is that I was not afraid in any simple way. I was a scholar of Talmudic demonology lying in the dark, in the grip of a neurological event I could name precisely, while something that should not have been there was there. I knew the clinical term. I knew the physiological mechanism, glycine and GABA, REM dissociation continuing into wakefulness. I knew all of this while lying there, unable to move. And then I realized something I had not registered in the first moments of waking. I was on my back. I had been on my back all night. I knew the Talmud's instruction. I had taught it. I had never followed it. I focused everything I had and turned. It took more effort than it should have. The paralysis was still partially active, the REM dissociation releasing slowly, but I turned to my right side. The room changed. There is no other way to describe it. The weight lifted, the pressure receded. What had been at the foot of the bed, whatever it was, neurological or otherwise, retreated. I lay on my right side in the dark for a long time. Then I got up and wrote in my notebook. I wrote, "The instruction is not theoretical." I have sat with that notebook entry for 20 years now. And what I keep returning to is not the question of what happened. Was it purely neurological? Was it something beyond that? I still go back and forth on it, honestly. What I keep returning to is the precision of the instruction. Not sleep facing east. Not sleep with a prayer under the pillow. Not sleep with a specific herb in the room. Sleep on your right side. And if you wake in the night on your back, turn immediately. That last part is in the tradition. The instruction is not only about how you begin the night, it is about what to do when you find yourself in the wrong position. The Talmud does not say, if you wake on your back, you have already failed. It says, if you wake on your back, the instruction is clear. Turn. Waking to find yourself on your back is the signal, not the disaster, the signal. Turn to the right side. And the Zoharic tradition adds what to do in the moment of turning. Not silence, not just a physical act, a declaration, some statement in your own language of what you know governs the night. The Shema is the traditional form, but the tradition does not require the Shema. It requires consciousness, It requires the deliberate act of naming what you know to be true while your body reorients itself. You have turned. Now speak. One sentence, said quietly, or only in your mind if others are sleeping, but meant. The tradition does not say this is a magic formula. It says this is the act of a person who is not unconsciously adrift in the dark. It is the act of someone who is present, even in the night hours. Now let me give you the full practice, exactly as the tradition specifies. 4 parts. The first part is the position. Sleep on your right side. Not the fetal position, though that is acceptable. Not the stomach. The tradition actually prohibits that too. Not the back. The right side. Body slightly curled. Right side down. This is Solomon's prescribed position. This is the position from which the Shema is recited before sleep. This is the position the tradition identifies as protected. If you are someone who naturally ends up on your back during the night, and many people do without knowing it, the tradition accounts for this. The second part tells you what to do. The second part is the immediate turn. If you wake in the night and find yourself on your back, turn. Do not lie there. Do not assess the situation. Waking on the back is the signal. The instruction is already known. Turn to the right side. This act, simple, physical, immediate, is itself described as protective in the Zoharic tradition. Not the intention to turn, not the mental note to remember to turn. The turn. The physical reorientation of the body away from the exposed position. In sleep paralysis specifically, turning can be difficult. The muscle suppression system of REM sleep may still be partially active. The Talmud's instruction knows this. The instruction is not turn if it is easy. The instruction is turn. Focus on one part of the body. A hand, a foot. Begin the movement there. The paralysis releases. Turn. The third part is the spoken declaration. Upon turning, say something aloud, or under your breath if others are sleeping. Any genuine declaration of divine protection, in your own language, in your own words. The Solomonic tradition does not prescribe a formula for this moment. It prescribes a posture, the right side, and a consciousness. You have named the danger. You have turned. Now you have spoken. Grace might say, the name of God covers this house and this body. David might say, I know what this is and I know how it ends. The tradition accepts both. What it requires is that the declaration is genuine, that it comes from the person who has turned, not from the memory of a formula copied from a text. You are not performing a ritual. You are asserting something true about the night you are in. The fourth part is the nightly seal. Before you sleep, before you close your eyes at the start of the night, the Talmudic tradition prescribes the recitation of the Shema, or its equivalent in your tradition. The Shema is, at its core, a declaration of divine unity. The first line, Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. For the tradition, reciting this before sleep is not ritual for ritual's sake. It is the act of establishing conscious intention before the soul's partial departure during sleep. You have not simply gone unconscious. You have stated consciously, before closing your eyes, what governs the night you are entering. The paper under the mattress from our last video is consciousness left awake in your place. This is the same principle. The nightly Shema, or your own declaration in your own tradition, is consciousness asserted before you become unavailable to assert it. You have spoken. You have named what covers the night. The soul departs partially into sleep, but the declaration was made. The night is sealed. Let me show you one more connection before I close, because I think it completes the picture. The global consistency of the sleep paralysis entity is documented across every culture that researchers have studied. Malevolent presence, weight on the chest, something at the foot of the bed, European, Islamic, Japanese, Yoruba, Igbo, all of them involving a person lying on their back. The question this raises is not whether the entity is neurological or metaphysical. The question this raises is, why did every tradition that encountered this experience arrive independently at a prohibition against the position that causes it? European folk tradition, warnings about sleeping on the back, Islamic protective practice, specific prayers before sleep to protect from night visitors. Yoruba tradition, the position of the Ori, the personal head spirit, must not be left unguarded during sleep. Igbo tradition, the MMO are most active around those who are fully exposed. None of these traditions had access to Berakhot 13b. None of them had the Shulchan Aruch. None of them had the 2002 Cheney study. They had the same observation. A person lying flat on their back, face upward, completely open, is vulnerable in a way that no other sleeping position creates. Every tradition that paid close attention to what happens in the night arrived at this. Solomon's tradition left the most specific instruction, but the observation belongs to everyone who has ever watched carefully what happens to sleeping people. I want to say something directly to Grace, if she is watching tonight. Her grandmother in Nigeria may have said exactly what Solomon's scribes recorded, not because her grandmother read the Talmud, not because the Yoruba Ogun Oru tradition borrowed from Berakhot, but because the observation is accurate. And accurate observations survive in every tradition that values them. Her grandmother's instruction about sleep, about the position, about the vulnerability of the night, about what approaches when a person is fully exposed, was not superstition. It was field-tested protective knowledge, the same knowledge that the Shulchan Aruch codified, the same knowledge that a 2002 peer-reviewed study confirmed. The grandmother who warned her grandchildren about how to sleep was transmitting something real. She just transmitted it in Yoruba, not in Aramaic. And I want to say something to David if he is watching tonight. The Cheney study did not explain the entity. Sleep medicine explains the mechanism of the paralysis, the glycine and GABA, the REM dissociation, the hypnagogic hallucinations. It does not explain why the hallucinations take the same form across all cultures, why the entity is consistently malevolent, specifically pressing, specifically associated with the supine position. The mechanism is understood. The content of the hallucination is not. The clinical literature describes the hallucinations as sensed presence, incubus, and vestibular motor hallucinations, 3 distinct types. But it does not explain why the sensed presence is consistently experienced as threatening and specifically associated with a weight or pressure. Solomon's tradition has a detailed explanation. Whether that explanation is metaphorical, literal, or something else entirely, David will have to decide. But the convergence is real. The Talmud names the danger. The study measures it. The Kabbalistic texts describe the entity. The clinical literature documents the hallucinations. The tradition prescribes turning to the right side. The epidemiology confirms this reduces the event. I am not asking David to believe in Sitra Akra. I'm asking him to notice that 2 systems arrived at the same danger from completely different directions. What he makes of that is his choice. Solomon did not forbid this position because of superstition. He forbade it because he understood something that took modern science 3,000 years to confirm. Tonight you know what he knew. Turn to the right side. Sleep on your right side. And if you wake in the night in the wrong position, if you find yourself on your back with something in the room, the instruction is already inside you now. Turn. That is all the tradition requires. That single turn, made deliberately in the dark, changes everything about the night you are in. What has been happening in the night cannot happen from the right side. Solomon knew this. The rabbis who codified Jewish law knew this. The grandmothers in Nsukka and Lagos and Yoruba land knew this. The researchers at Waterloo confirmed it in 2002, and now you know it too. Turn to the right side tonight. What has been in the room cannot stay there from that position. Solomon's tradition is 3,000 years old. The study is 23 years old. Both of them are telling you the same thing, and it costs you nothing to listen.